I've been playing the banjo for almost 10 years now, and I've learned hundreds of songs, solos, and licks almost entirely by ear. It took me that long to learn everything that I'm going to show you right now in this video. I'm not kidding when I say that by the end of this video, you will have all the information you need to learn to play the banjo or really any instrument by ear. But it's worth noting that learning and playing by ear takes a lot of patience and effort. It didn't come easily to me at first, and it only ever got easier when I worked at it. It doesn't happen by accident. Let's first deal with learning by ear. All you have to do is listen to something and then find it on your instrument. But how do we actually start doing that? At first, our ears aren't generally trained to hear individual notes, especially on the banjo and especially at fast tempos. If that's the case, then you'll need something to slow down the recording. This can be done in a bunch of different ways, so here's a list of programs specifically designed to help you slow down recordings. Personally, I usually just use YouTube because you can slow down any video by clicking on the little settings icon in the corner and setting the speed to either 75 or 50%. Once you've slowed down your recording, you just need to listen to it a lot. And I mean a lot. There is no upper limit for the number of times you can listen to something before you start to hear it. But let's be specific about what it is that we're actually listening to. Right now, we're just listening to the first note. We're going to listen to that note, and then we're going to try to find it on our instrument. It's not easy to do, but it's a simple process. For what it's worth, in Western music, there are only 12 notes. The note you're trying to find is one of those 12 notes. At first, it might be just trial and error, but eventually you're going to find that note. And in that moment, when the note that you're hearing and the note that you're playing turns out to be the same, your ear is getting stronger. So, listen to the note, and then try a note. Listen to the note, and then try a note. There it is. It's a drop in the bucket, but there really isn't any other way to do it. As you do it more and more, you'll find each note faster and faster. For this YouTube channel, I learned almost 100 different songs and solos completely by ear over the course of the last 3 years, and many more in my own personal practice. Every single time I learned something this way, it got a little bit easier. But there's a problem. Bluegrass banjo is an incredibly complex musical language that requires very specific techniques and positions in order to reproduce the sound that we want. For instance, technically you could pick out all the notes of this pattern, but interpret it like this. All the correct notes are there, but that's obviously not what we're really hearing when Earl Scruggs or J.D. Crowe plays. In fact, here's the story of the first thing that I learned to play by ear on the banjo. When I first started playing the banjo, I came from the jazz world, where you use your ear all the time to learn solos and improvise. I decided to apply that strategy to bluegrass, and I learned painstakingly, note for note, J.D. Crowe's kickoff to Blue Ridge Cabin Home from the first Bluegrass Album Band record. But when I played it, it sounded like this. As you can definitely tell, that didn't sound anything like J.D. Crowe. The notes are mostly there, but I'm sliding all over the place in ways that J.D. Crowe never would have done. I'm not planting any of my fingers on the banjo head. I'm playing way up by the neck. I'm not playing very hard. It really isn't what J.D. Crowe played, aside from the exact pitches. Strangely enough, the solution to this problem is to also learn to play the banjo not by ear, but instead by accessing resources like tablature or a private teacher or videos online. You want to find a reputable source that can show you the correct positions and fingerings for the style that you want to play. I learned to plant a finger on the head of the banjo from a teacher, and I learned to slide from 2 to 3 instead of 2 to 4 from tablature. And I learned where J.D. Crowe put his hand on the head of the banjo by watching a video. Now when I listen to J.D. Crowe and try to learn something, I have a pretty good idea of what his left and right hand is doing. My ability to pick out these notes by ear is now filtered through my knowledge of the bluegrass language, and it's a really good idea to develop these skills at the same time. Now let's figure out what it means to play by ear. So far as I can tell, when a student asks me about this, they mean that they want to be able to improvise or to spontaneously play what they hear. This is definitely possible, but it's important to note that our ability to improvise or play what we hear is directly proportional to our experience level with the language that we're trying to use. In other words, we're not going to be able to make something up that sounds like bluegrass if we haven't actually spent time playing bluegrass before. Here's an example to put this in context. Let's say I'm at a bluegrass jam and somebody's singing the bluegrass song, Somehow Tonight.
Somehow tonight I feel lonely, my darling. Somehow tonight I feel blue.
An appropriate way to start a banjo solo for that song would be something like this. But if you've never played anything that started like that before, then it's unlikely that in the middle of the song you're just going to invent the perfect thing to play. However, if in the past you had played something that starts in a similar way, like Blue Ridge Cabin Home, or Your Love Is Like a Flower, or My Home's Across the Blue Ridge Mountain, then you'd be able to use your ear to decide that starting the same way is a good idea. Just like learning something by ear, playing by ear benefits from your prior experience. And here's where it gets interesting. The more you learn, the more flexible your vocabulary will become. So instead of just playing this, you'll be able to choose from all of these different examples. I didn't invent any of those. I'm just choosing from a list of patterns that I've learned in the past. Making choices like this is playing by ear. The reality is that great improvisers, whether it's in bluegrass or jazz or really any other style, are generally choosing from an array of patterns or scales or licks that they've learned in the past. The more scales, patterns, licks, solos, any kind of material that you've learned in the past, the more options you're going to have when improvising. So where does all that material come from? That's really up to you. I personally have spent the last 8 years or so learning the music of J.D. Crowe, Earl Scruggs, Ron Stewart, and a bunch of my other banjo heroes. You'll have to choose the players that you're going to want to learn from, and in doing so, you're going to shape your sound to be a unique combination of all the players you love. All of this is well and good, but now the rubber meets the road and we need a plan for learning and playing by ear. It's not going to happen by tomorrow, but if you do these things, then bit by bit, every time you practice, it's going to get a little bit easier and you're going to get a little bit better at playing and learning by ear. Learn something by ear as often as you can. You don't have to learn an entire song or an entire solo. Even if you figure out one note by ear every day, you're making huge progress and it's going to get easier every time you do it. I've listened to a single note literally hundreds, if not thousands of times just to figure out what it is. It takes as long as it takes and you'll be a better musician for having taken the time. Remember to use a program or YouTube to slow down a recording if you need to. This really isn't just for beginners. I actually do this every time I learn something by ear just to make sure I really get every note. Use your understanding of the bluegrass banjo language to decide where something should be played on the neck or what fingering to use. If you don't know, then you're better off checking with a reputable source like tablature or a teacher or a video. Then, next time it comes up when you're learning something by ear, you won't have to ask. When you learn new licks or songs, keep your ears open and consider whether or not that material could be used somewhere else. There are a lot of really similar songs in bluegrass, and so a lot of licks that work in one song are going to work really well in another. Knowing a little bit of music theory, like what chords fit in what key and what notes are in each chord, can be really helpful to contextualize some of what you're learning by ear. You don't need to know any music theory to play bluegrass banjo, but it will make it easier to improvise and really understand what it is that you're doing. And perhaps most importantly, don't give up. It can be a really frustrating process to try to learn something by ear, and it can be a really frustrating process to try to decide what's the right thing to play. And it only gets easier with time. As with anything else, it's really just about how motivated you are to keep going. If you can learn to love the process of learning something by ear, then it won't bother you so much when it's difficult. There are no tabs associated with this lesson, but if you're interested in expanding your banjo vocabulary, which will help you to play by ear, then you should head to my website, EliGilbertBanjo.com. Or better yet, head to patreon.com/EliGilbertBanjo, where you can get a bunch of extra tabs and extra lessons, practice tips, all kinds of cool stuff. And if you like this video, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments if there's anything else you want to hear about in this type of video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.